I want you to imagine, just for a second, carrying this invisible, crushing weight every single day.
Oh, man. Yeah. That's a heavy thought.
Right. Like, we are talking about a physical and mental heaviness that literally drains all the color from your life. It shatters your sleep cycle and, it makes the things you used to love feel utterly, impossibly pointless.
It's completely debilitating.
It really is. But now, what if the key to lifting that heavy, suffocating blanket wasn't found in, like, some modern pharmaceutical lab, but locked inside the root bark of a West African plant?
I mean, it sounds almost like an ancient myth, right? Colliding with modern medicine. But the reality of what this specific plant compound is doing to the human brain is, well, it's entirely grounded in some of the most cutting-edge neuroscience we have today.
Absolutely. So welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is to look at the massive global wave of treatment-resistant depression. And, the extreme lengths people are going to, literally crossing international borders just to find a neurological reset button.
Because when standard medicine just, well, hits a wall, a rapidly growing number of people are refusing to accept the darkness. They're basically treating a cure as their fundamental right.
Exactly. They deserve that right to be happy. Okay, let's unpack this, because if we are going to understand why people are taking such drastic measures, we have to look at the sheer scale of the crisis first.
Yeah, we have to look at the numbers.
Right, and we aren't talking about a niche issue here. Right now, there are an estimated 332 million people worldwide living with depression.
Wow.
Yeah, 332 million. That is 5.7% of all adults globally. And for anyone listening who might have been, lucky enough to avoid this, we need to be crystal clear. This is not just experiencing a bad week or normal mood fluctuation.
Not at all. It is a profound systemic medical condition. I mean, clinically speaking, to even be categorized as a depressive episode, we're talking about a state of severe despondency that lasts for most of the day, nearly every day, for at least 2 weeks.
It's relentless.
It really is. It brings with it this immense illogical guilt, a total collapse of self-worth, and absolute hopelessness about the future. And extreme debilitating physical fatigue. The kind of fatigue where just standing up to brush your teeth feels like running a marathon.
But I'm looking at that number, 332 million people. Why is this spreading so fast among the masses? Like, it feels like this compounding epidemic. What is the actual mechanism driving this global surge?
Well, what's fascinating here is that depression isn't just one thing.
Right.
It isn't just a single broken gear in the machine. It is a vicious, self-perpetuating feedback loop.
Like a cycle you can't break out of.
Exactly. It's made up of social, psychological, and biological factors. Usually it starts with an adverse life event. We're talking about severe trauma, unexpected unemployment, or, the loss of a loved one.
So that acts as the initial trigger.
Right. That trigger creates a massive spike in stress hormones like cortisol.
So the initial trauma is just the match, but the resulting dysfunction acts as the fuel that keeps the fire burning.
Precisely. Chronic high cortisol levels literally start to change the architecture of the brain, particularly in the areas regulating emotion and memory.
That is terrifying.
And that biological shift creates social and psychological fallout. Suddenly, because of that extreme fatigue and emotional numbness, it becomes harder to hold down a job.
Or maintain relationships, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes incredibly difficult to maintain friendships or romantic relationships. That isolation worsens the person's life situation, which in turn spikes stress again, deepening the depression.
You're basically describing a trap.
It is a trap. And, the trap has a profound physical link, too. Factors like severe physical inactivity or harmful coping habits almost always accompany depression.
Right, because you just don't have the energy to care for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So biochemically, the body enters a state of chronic inflammation. This creates known risk factors for major chronic diseases: cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes.
Oh.
Now imagine you are already paralyzed by depression, and then you develop diabetes. The sheer cognitive load and difficulty of managing a chronic physical disease dumps even more stress on the system, which worsens the depression.
Millions of people are just caught in this biological and psychological loop, and their brains simply cannot find the off-ramp.
Yeah, they're stuck.
And I think the really heartbreaking part of this loop is the massive treatment gap. Even in high-income countries with, advanced medical infrastructure, only about a third of people with depression actually receive mental health treatment.
Just a third. It's staggering.
Right. And for those who do, standard care-like talk therapy or SSRI medications like fluoxetine, it absolutely works for some. It saves lives.
Oh, for sure. It's crucial.
But what happens to the massive population who tries years of talk therapy, cycles through a dozen different daily medications, deals with terrible side effects, and gets absolutely nowhere?
Well, those are the treatment-resistant patients. The conventional medical system essentially just runs out of tools for them.
And that is a terrifying place to be. But I think what's driving this mass movement we're talking about today is a fundamental shift in mindset.
How so?
People are realizing they have a right to pursue happiness, to seek out an actual cure and not just accept a life of merely managing symptoms. If the conventional system hits a wall, they are looking elsewhere.
Which brings us directly to Ibogaine.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Because when standard SSRIs fail to break the loop, this naturally occurring psychoactive alkaloid is what people are turning to. It is derived from the root bark of the Tabernanthe iboga plant, which is native to West Africa.
Now, historically, if people have heard of Ibogaine at all, it's usually in the context of addiction, right? Like, it's famous for interrupting severe opioid or alcohol dependencies almost overnight.
Yeah, that's what put it on the map.
But now it's gaining serious international traction for interrupting these severe, entrenched depressive episodes. But I gotta ask, how exactly does a plant root interrupt decades of neurological damage? Because this can't just be, like, a stronger version of an antidepressant.
No, it is a completely different paradigm of treatment.
Yeah.
To understand the how, we really have to look at how Ibogaine interacts with the brain compared to standard drugs or even other psychedelics like psilocybin.
Okay, lay it on me.
Standard antidepressants, like SSRIs, typically target one specific neurotransmitter system,
Yeah.
usually serotonin, trying to keep more of it floating around in the brain.
Right.
Ibogaine, however, targets multiple neurotransmitter systems all at once. It interacts comprehensively with your serotonin and dopamine systems, basically resetting their baseline, and it also binds to the brain's opioid receptors.
Okay, resetting the baseline sounds great, but I want to understand the actual physical change. You mentioned earlier that chronic depression literally changes the architecture of the brain. Can this plant actually undo physical degradation?
Yes, and it does it through a mechanism called neuroplasticity. This is where it gets incredibly fascinating.
I'm all ears.
When someone has severe long-term depression, the neural pathways, like the literal physical connections in the brain, start to atrophy. Think of neurons like trees, right? Under chronic stress, their branches, which are called dendrites, shrivel up and retreat.
Oh, wow. So communication between different parts of the brain just breaks down.
Exactly. So the brain is physically shrinking its communication network.
That's a grim visual.
It is. But what Ibogaine does is temporarily trigger a massive spike in the production of something called GDNF. That's glial cell line-derived neurotrophic factor.
GDNF, right?
You can think of GDNF as ultra-powerful targeted fertilizer for the brain. By releasing this, the brain is forced into a state of hyper-repair.
Like a force to heal itself.
Yeah, it actively encourages those shriveled dendrites to sprout new branches and regenerate healthy cellular communication. It promotes a window of time where the brain can literally, physically reorganize itself.
I love thinking about it like this. I was picturing it earlier. The depressed brain is like a skipped record on a turntable.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. It is physically stuck, playing the exact same rigid, deeply negative, painful loop of music over and over and over again. And standard daily treatments sometimes feel like they're just, I don't know, putting a pillow over the speaker to muffle that scratching sound.
Yeah, just masking the symptom.
Exactly. But Ibogaine isn't just turning down the volume. It is lifting the needle, repairing the physical scratch on the vinyl, and laying down new grooves so the record can actually play normally again.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize the biological rewiring. I really like that. But we have to remember the biology is only half the equation.
What's the other half?
The psychological experience during the treatment is just as critical. Ibogaine induces a very specific state called oneirophrenia.
Oneirophrenia. I've actually seen that term. It basically translates to a waking dream, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, most psychedelics dissolve your sense of self or completely alter your visual reality. But Ibogaine is different.
Oh.
Patients report entering this deeply introspective, lucid state where they act almost like an objective observer of their own life. They are essentially watching a highly vivid internal documentary of their deeply rooted emotional traumas, their past choices, and, well, their internal blockages.
I'm trying to picture why the brain would suddenly allow that. Because normally, if you try to sit down and think about a severe trauma, your brain just floods you with intense emotional pain.
Right, your anxiety spikes, your chest tightens.
Yeah, it's a defense mechanism to stop you from looking at the pain.
Exactly. And that defense mechanism is driven by the amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain. What Ibogaine appears to do is temporarily suppress that amygdala-driven fear response while keeping the memory centers, like the hippocampus, wide awake.
Oh, that's wild.
So the patient can review their most painful, suppressed memories without feeling the usual agonizing emotional sting. They can objectively process trauma that has been locked away for years, sometimes decades, simply because the fear barrier has been temporarily removed.
That sounds incredibly powerful, but also, honestly, utterly exhausting. Like, walk me through the actual logistics here. What physically happens when a patient goes to a clinic for this? This clearly isn't just, swallowing a pill, lying on a couch for an hour, and driving home.
No, not at all. It is a highly intense, physically demanding medical procedure. The core treatment is broken down into two distinct phases.
Okay.
First is the flood dose. This is the actual administration of the ibogaine hydrochloride. It initiates a highly monitored 12 to 24-hour period of that intense psycho-spiritual introspection we just discussed.
Wait, 12 to 24 hours of a waking dream. That is an absolute marathon for the nervous system.
It is entirely draining. By the end of it, the patient's brain has processed years of trauma and initiated massive neurochemical shifts.
They can't even imagine.
Which is why the flood dose is immediately followed by what clinics call the gray day.
The gray day.
Yeah. This is a 24 to 48-hour period of profound physical and mental exhaustion. The patient is usually extremely sensitive to light and sound. They're emotionally vulnerable and just physically wiped out.
It literally sounds like taking your brain offline for major surgery, and the gray day is being in the recovery room.
That's exactly what it is. During that gray day, while the body is resting, that neuroplastic integration, the actual sprouting of those new neural branches thanks to the GDNF, is actively occurring.
Okay, but let me stop you there because we really need to talk about what happens after the clinic. I don't want anyone listening to think this is a permanent, one-and-done magic pill. You don't just wake up on day 3 perfectly cured forever, right?
No, and honestly, treating it like a magic wand is dangerous. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Ibogaine is a catalyst, not a cure-all.
A catalyst?
Right. That spike in neuroplasticity provides a window that lasts for roughly 3 to 6 months. During that afterglow period, the brain is incredibly receptive to behavioral changes. It is highly malleable.
So you have a few months where your brain is like wet clay, ready to be reshaped?
Exactly. But if you don't actively reshape it, the clay will harden right back into its old form. This is why integration is the most vital part of the process.
What does integration actually look like in practice?
It means returning home and consistently working with specialized therapists or coaches. It means doing the hard work to process the complex visions you had, consciously building new healthy habits, and implementing cognitive behavioral tools.
Because if you just go back to sitting on your couch, eating poorly, and isolating yourself, those new neural pathways will just wither away again.
Precisely. Without dedicated integration work, the neurochemical reset will eventually fade, and patients absolutely run the risk of sliding right back into their familiar depressive feedback loops. The medicine clears the psychological slate, but the patient still has to write a new life on it.
It gives you the mental space and the physical capability to do the work you literally couldn't do before. That's beautiful. But here is the massive, unavoidable obstacle for anyone listening in the US or Canada. The legal status.
Yeah. You cannot just go to your primary care doctor, ask for Ibogaine, and schedule a session. It is tightly restricted as a Schedule I controlled substance in North America. Legally, it does not exist in the conventional medical framework.
It's completely locked away.
So how do people fighting for their lives access it? They have to leave. They turn to medical tourism, primarily in Mexico, where the regulatory environment allows specialized clinical administration.
And, that geographic barrier introduces an entirely new layer of extreme complexity and risk for the patient.
Well, yeah. Let me push back on this whole concept for a second. We are talking about someone with severe, crippling depression traveling to a foreign country to ingest a highly intense 24-hour psychedelic compound.
I know, it sounds intense.
That sounds incredibly fundamentally risky. Like, how on earth can that be safe?
It is critical to address that because it does carry severe medical risks. Ibogaine is not biologically benign. Specifically, it carries serious cardiovascular risk.
Okay, heart issues. Yes. It is known to prolong what cardiologists call the QT interval in the heart's electrical system.
What does that actually mean for the heart mechanically?
So the heart operates on an electrical cycle. After every single beat, the heart muscle's electrical system has to recharge. That recharge time is measured as the QT interval. Ibogaine stretches that recharge time out.
And if it stretches too much?
If it stretches too far, the next heartbeat fires out of sync. This can lead to a severe arrhythmia, and in extreme cases, sudden cardiac arrest.
Wait, so if you have a pre-existing heart condition or you just naturally have a long QT interval, taking this could literally be fatal.
Yes, it absolutely could. And that is exactly why selecting a top-tier, specialized, medically rigorous clinic is absolutely mandatory.
You can't just go to a retreat in the jungle for this.
No, you really can't. The industry in Mexico is largely decentralized, meaning the quality of care varies wildly. Trustworthy facilities treat this as a major medical procedure. They implement exhaustive screening protocols long before you ever board a plane.
What kind of screening?
We are talking about mandatory, comprehensive EKGs to measure your heart's baseline rhythm, detailed liver function panels to ensure your body can metabolize the compound, and extensive metabolic blood tests.
And what about the medications the patient is already on? You mentioned SSRIs earlier. Can you mix them?
Absolutely not. Mixing Ibogaine with standard SSRIs or anti-anxiety drugs can cause a fatal overload of serotonin, known as serotonin syndrome.
So they have to come off them first.
Yes. Rigorous clinics enforce strict medication tapering. You have to be safely and slowly weaned off your psychiatric medications under a doctor's supervision weeks prior to arrival.
Man, that's a lot to manage. And what about the actual day of the treatment, like if things go wrong during the 24-hour flood dose?
Reputable clinics operate like intensive care units. They have advanced cardiac life support ACLS-certified staff monitoring the patient 24/7. They have continuous EKG telemetry on the patient during the entire flood dose.
So you're wired up the whole time?
Exactly. They have fully equipped cardiac crash carts right there in the room. The patient-to-nurse ratio is heavily restricted to ensure constant observation.
Okay, so the safety protocols definitely exist. The science is there to manage the risk. But here's the reality. For someone already paralyzed by the immense weight of severe depression, just like replying to an email is a massive victory.
Right, absolutely.
Right. The idea of independently trying to vet foreign medical clinics, translate EKG protocols, confirm the ACLS certification of Mexican nurses, and handle international travel logistics, that is an overwhelming, impossible nightmare. It's a wall they literally can't climb.
It is a massive barrier to entry,
Right.
which is where the logistics of medical tourism become a critical part of the healthcare equation.
Right. And based on what we're looking at, this is where specialized medical tourism platforms come into play, platforms like PlacidWay. They essentially operate as an objective vetting layer and a logistical bridge. For a patient who is just too exhausted to do the heavy lifting, these platforms securely connect them to internationally vetted, highly qualified facilities, such as New Path Ibogaine or Ibogaine Cancun.
They handle all the verification that the patient just can't do. They independently verify the medical credentials of the on-site doctors, ensure the emergency response capabilities and crash carts are actually real, and confirm that the stringent safety protocols, like the EKGs and medication tapering rules, are strictly enforced.
They also provide transparency with clear pricing, which we have to talk about because the financial devastation of chronic depression is huge.
Oh, it ruins people financially.
Yeah. If you look at alternative intensive psychiatric therapies available in North America, things like specialized inpatient care or legal ketamine infusions, you can easily be looking at out-of-pocket expenses north of $15,000 and sometimes much, much more.
It's cost prohibitive for most people.
Exactly. But through these vetted international clinics, a fully comprehensive 7 to 10-day package typically costs between $5,000 and $10,000.
And it is important to understand what that actually covers. That price point generally encompasses the entire residential stay, the intensive on-site pre-treatment diagnostics, the administration of the Ibogaine itself, the continuous 24/7 cardiac monitoring and nursing care, plus the initial psychological counseling sessions to kickstart the integration phase.
And for patients in the U.S. or Canada, the proximity of Mexico makes it viable. Like direct flights to major hubs like Cancun or Tijuana make the travel physically manageable.
Right, it's not halfway across the world.
Exactly. The platforms coordinate those logistics so the patient can reserve all their limited mental energy for what actually matters, their psychological preparation, setting their intentions, modifying their diet, and safely working with their local doctor to taper off their SSRIs.
Removing that logistical anxiety is essential. You want the patient entering the acclimatization phase of the treatment with their cortisol levels as low as possible.
Yeah.
They need to be calm and focused on the internal work ahead, not panicking about whether their clinic is legitimate.
It really is a complete paradigm shift in how we view mental health care.
It truly is.
We've covered the deep biology of the brain, the staggering global statistics, the intense physical reality of the treatment, and the logistical hurdles of crossing borders.
We covered a lot of ground today.
We really did. So what does this all mean? Pulling all of this together, for you listening right now, the core insight here is profound. If you or someone you deeply care about has been trapped in that dark, suffocating feedback loop of treatment-resistant depression, there is a whole world of science happening outside the conventional boundaries.
Exactly.
You are not a lost cause. You have a fundamental right to seek out innovative, transformative therapies and fight for your happiness. And platforms like PlacidWay exist to make that bold journey safe and accessible.
Because the standard medical route, while effective for many, is simply not the only route available to human beings.
Exactly. People are realizing they don't have to navigate the darkness or the international medical landscape completely alone. The tools to reset the brain exist, and the bridges to reach them safely are being built.
Which leaves us with a fascinating, almost unsettling question to consider as we look at the future of global medicine.
I'm intrigued. What is it?
Well, if the complex chemical compounds hidden in the root bark of a single West African plant possess the raw biological power to rapidly rewire decades of human trauma and repair physical neurological damage, how many other profound natural resets are currently locked away by modern regulations, just waiting to offer humanity a second chance at life?
That is something to think about.